As you can clearly tell, I'm literally obsessed with Natlan, so if they give us a teaser that shows us this nation, I will make another video. So, this is a theory video. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update of the game itself. We have quite a bit to discuss, despite the fact that the Natlan video was barely a minute long, so let's start with the landscape first. We see a lot of vases and paint splashes on the walls as well as graffiti, which tells us that Natlan is going to be very art-oriented, especially because these murals were painted to record the tales of the nation. In fact, we see murals of every kind. Street graffiti, paintings of the Saurians, but above all they painted entire mountains, which is crazy but I love it. I can already see graffiti events coming up in 5.0 and I can wait for it. We also see these strange floating islands that kinda look like the Primordial Sea but upside down and solidified. We see lava inside probably a volcano, then a lush landscape with all sorts of new plants and most likely a new kind of puzzle that we can solve using a Saurian. And then there's this ship inside a mountain that really caught my eye, but we're gonna talk about it in the next section of the video. We were also shown a Shrine of Deaths beneath the ship in the mountain, and just one statue of the Seven, although we can really only see its base and the light pillar in the distance. I was hoping to see a little bit more about the statue, but it's the only statue I've managed to see in the entire video. There isn't even one in the wide landscape at the end, not even a pillar of light actually, which is strange. Anyway, talking about the ending wide panorama, we see this weird black thing that really looks like something went wrong with the texture, then something that looks like a weird volcano just as slanted as the mountains in Fontaine, this weird tree formation, or at least it looks like a tree, these floating things that may actually be hot air balloons since we can barely see one when the dangerous Saurian lands, an interestingly shaped mountain that is missing a chunk in the middle, something that really looks like the bones of a huge monster, and this almost circular fracture in the ground where underneath it seems we will find the woods from the dangerous Saurian we saw before. We can also see where exactly Natlan is going to be located because we see this natural arch in the distance, and I did find it in the Girl of the Sand. There's this slanted arch, it has an upper edge and another one below. The trees in the Tunigi Hollow may be these weird spikes we see in the video, and there's also this other mountain that shares the same shape as the one in the video. So this means that Natlan is probably gonna be here on the map, and as usual, let me leave a pin and see if I got it right when it gets released. Going back to the ship inside the mountain, it caught my eye because it kinda reminded me of Noah's Ark that is supposed to be on Mount Ararat, and in Before Sun and Moon we learned of an ark that brought the humans into Teyvat. As I said in my Order and Harmony of Teyvat video, in Stariel we heard of the planet Melustanin, the agate world, and I believe this to be a reference to Natlan since the pyro essential material is called Agnidus agate, but in general the name agate and its variations is always connected to fire. There's a crimson agate on Dragonspine that gives off that blood fire vibe similar to Arlecchino, and there's also the Seraphim Prince of Fire Agatha in Honkai Impact 3rd. Now, Melustanin is the initial site of the Stellaron disaster, and if it is really a hint, then it means that Natlan could be the first nation of the microcosm of Teyvat, from which everything has been created. Natlan seems to be a very special nation. Usually the landscape of a nation reflects the element of its archon. For example, Sumeru is a lush rainforest that represents Dendro, and Fontaine is an elevated island with countless lakes that represent Hydro. When it comes to Natlan, it's not a burning place riddled with volcanoes and lava basically everywhere, it's not just about pyro. The Saurians are no different. Novelette told us that the dragons of Natlan evolved in a specific way, and in the video we saw that they switched their element to adapt to the specific section of land where they live in. This makes me think that Natlan may really be where Teyvat as a whole came from, or at the very least, that Pyro is the progenitor of the other elements. Furthermore, the elements in the loading screen may finally make sense. The first element is Pyro, so the first creation power of Teyvat. Then there's Hydro, from which most of the living beings of Teyvat were created. Then there's Anemo, because good luck living in a place with no oxygen, so the air or the birds of the air as it is said in Before Sun and Moon. Up until here, Teyvat basically mirrors how our Earth was created. First it was an incandescent ball in the solar system, then the first oceans appeared either because of pre-existing factors or because of asteroids crashing on the surface, and in those oceans the first living beings appeared. And then through photosynthesis, oxygen was created, so those living beings were able to leave the water and live on the surface. Electro has always been a huge mystery, to be honest. Lightning has been essential for the creation of the atmosphere, but also in the production of biologically useful materials on Earth, so it may have had the same purpose in Teyvat. Then there's Dendro, and this has potentially two meanings. Before Sun and Moon says that the next step was the creation of flowers, grass and trees, but we also know that Apep nurtured the first life forms of Teyvat, which could also be connected to before finally creating humans that once again Before Sun and Moon told us about. When it comes to Cryo, for some reason I kinda think it was used to create the fate sky, the borders or shield of the microcosm, which is also the next thing mentioned in Before Sun and Moon. Lastly, Geo does fit with what Before Sun and Moon says, because the last thing mentioned in that chapter is the sand, but personally I think that Geo, or better yet the primordial sands from the description of the core of flowing sand, is related to the ley lines, the veins of the earth, because Ashtaha lost his sanity when the people started messing with the ley lines. Anyway, to conclude, Natlan and Pyro may be defined as the Forge of Teyvat, which really gives me Hephaestus vibes, especially considering that his Roman name was Vulcano, which perfectly fits the nation of Pyro. My second theory of the day has to do with a detail Ranjit told us about Natlan. He mentioned the hot springs, and we've known that they existed since Inazuma, but the way that Ranjit told us that they heal the body and soul and that they are very addictive makes me think that there's something weird going on behind them. Why can they heal the body and soul? And why are they so addicting? Apart from the potential new mechanics that could allow us to heal our characters if we stepped into them, which would be nice actually, the hot springs may be one of the reasons why the people of Natlan don't leave their nation. Maybe they've been using them for so long that they are literally born with the addiction, and they cannot do without them. Maybe they would even have hot spring withdrawal if they didn't use the hot springs for a long time. Maybe there's even something way sassier behind their ability to heal, especially because they can heal the soul. What could that mean? Is this going to be related to the resurrection theme of Natlan? Also, is this why the people from the other nations usually go back to Natlan on vacation? Could it be that they're feeling the addiction as well? In that case, these hot springs may actually be dangerous. When it comes to the Saurians, things are quite complicated. We were shown 6 symbols, each representing a dragon evolution, so a Saurian species, and they most likely also represent the 6 tribes of Natlan. We were shown 3 Saurians, the Geo, Hydro and Dendro ones, and we will probably get another short video showing the other 3. Something interesting that I noticed is that when they picked the 3 Saurians, a flame appeared at the center of the Triquetra, as if to say that they all evolved from the Fire Dragon Sovereign. Something also interesting is that the Hydrosaurian can swim in lava, which could mean that, despite the fact that they changed their main element, they are still connected to their roots, so they still have some kind of affinity with Pyro. When it comes to the other 3 Saurians that we didn't see, I think that the top left symbol is the Pyrosaurian, so the huge flying dragon we see at the end of the video, because it looks very similar to the Saurian symbol. They both have these unique looking wings, these spikes, and something on their head. The top right symbol is the Animosaurian, mainly because it just looks like a bat, and the bottom symbol is the Electrosaurian, out of exclusion, but also because Ranjit told us that the monsters he picked are quite similar to the Saurians in Natlan, especially their colors, so there has to be an Electrosaurian. Now, when it comes to the monsters Ranjit picked, we can clearly see a similarity between the Jade Plume Pteroshroom and the Q Dendrosaurian. The Primal Geovishap is obviously similar to the Geosaurian, while the Millennial Pearl Seahorse is not gonna be exactly similar, because the monster is basically a horned horse, while the symbol represents something like a rhino, but horses and rhinos belong to 2 families of animals of the same order, so it still makes sense. The Pyro Registine instead is the odd one out because it doesn't even resemble any kind of animal. I mean, it's basically a plant. Furthermore, Ranjit basically confirmed that the colors of the Saurians reflect their elements, so the flying dragon at the end of the video has to be Pyro because it's red, and yet it doesn't really look anything like a Pyro Registine. To conclude on the elements, although Natlan is not primarily based on fire and lava, but instead has different environments that cause the Saurians to adapt to the predominant elements of their habitat, I still doubt that the temperatures could ever go as low as to create ice, nor is Natlan anywhere close to Snezhnaya, so there might not be a Cryosaurian. Still talking about the Saurians, if we read the description of the talking stick, we can kinda figure out the various Saurians, because the names of the companions of these heroes are the names of some cryptid creatures. There is dinosaurs that people believe to be still alive, but also legendary monsters like Nessie. Kayake accompanies the runner Wanjiru, and the cryptid Kayake is described as an anthropoid primate similar to a human, so I think it's a Dendrosaurian since it's the only one that walks and runs on 2 legs. The Mahamba cryptid is basically an alligator, so it should be the Hydrosaurian. The Muhuru cryptid is a grey lizard, so it should be the Geosaurian. The Kongamato cryptid is a huge red pterodactyl, and it looks just like the last Saurian we saw in the video, so I think it's the Pyrosaurian. The Ngobo cryptid is basically a rhinoceros with 7 horns, and it looks just like the Saurian symbol at the bottom, so again, out of exclusion, it should be the Electrosaurian. But also because the last hero from the talking stick is Tupac, and because of his massive body, he couldn't find a cryptid that could accompany him. So he may have belonged to the tribe of the Anemosaurians that look like bats, which could explain why none of them could really be useful to him. Plus, Ranjit's head looks like it was inspired by an Anemosaurian considering the color, and the shape is similar to the peculiar head of the Saurian symbol. Still talking about Ranjit, the one who rose where Liben let us down, he told us some other useful info about Natlan. He said that Natlan was once the land of ancient dragons, but now it's a land where humans and Saurians put mutual trust in each other and became companions. This is not exactly something new since Neuvillette basically told us the same thing in 4.2. He also told us that in the eastern side of the nation, so the borders with Sumeru, we will find the mines where the Nanaskayan people, or children of echoes, live with the Tepetlisauri, the Geosaurians. These people are miners, excavators, and appraisers of gems, and they are joyful people, especially their leader. I suppose that the word Nanaskayan comes from the Nazca culture, known for ceramics, textiles, and geoglyphs like the Nazca lines. I have no idea about the Children of Echoes. I tried to find some connection with Honkai Impact and Star Rail and I couldn't find anything, but the word Tepetlisauri probably comes from Tepetl, which simply means mountain. Next, Ranjit told us about the Iktomisauri. Initially, I thought that these Saurians were the Dendro ones, because he began telling us Kuntur's story when we went to fight the J-Plume Terror Shroom. But then he said that the Iktomisauri have great powers of flight, which could mean something or nothing at all. We did see the Dendrosaurian more or less flying thanks to those stars in the sky, and the Hydrosaurian can also somewhat fly on those elemental bridges, so maybe the concept of flying is something that the Saurians all have because of their roots, which would mean that the Fire Sovereign can probably fly, but the way they fly evolved into different concepts according to the specific variation or Saurian species. I will say though that Iktomi is the other name of the god of wisdom Xa from the Lakota mythology, and his story is similar to the Natlan hero Kuntur that Ranjit told us about. Since the god of wisdom in Teyvat is Dendro, it would hint at the Iktomisauri being the Dendrosaurians, but Kuntur in the Incan mythology is the Condor, one of the 3 sacred beasts, and it connects the upper world and their patron deity Inti, the god of the sun, with the earthly world, so in this case, it sounds like the Iktomisauri could be the Pyro Flying Saurian at the end of the video. I'll give it a 50-50 at this point. I don't feel like we have enough to give a definitive answer. Lastly, Ranjit told us about Kuntur being hated by the sun, and because of that, the tribes expelled him and the Saurians didn't want to party with him anymore. This makes me think that the Sun may be either the Pyro Archon or the Fire Dragon Sovereign itself, and if it's the latter, it would explain the Saurians' behavior. I've said in my countless Natlan videos that the Pyro Archon may be based on Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and of the sun from the Aztec mythology, but we were also introduced to Inti, the god of the sun from the Inca mythology, who is equally important. Both gods instructed their people to build their capital in specific places marked by specific signs. Huitzilopochtli told his people to build Tenochtitlan, where they found an eagle perched on top of a prickly pear cactus grown from the heart of his nephew, which always made me think of the heart on Aberius, while Inti told his children to build the Incan Empire with Cusco as the capital, where a divine golden bar or wedge penetrated the earth, which sounds like a celestial nail. Either way, the sun is going to be very important in Natlan. My theory about Natlan right now is that, considering the main theme will most likely be death and rebirth, since the Archon quest is Incandescent Ode of Resurrection, the Pyro Archon's quirk may be her ability to die and come back to life, something she's done multiple times in the past, maybe every time a new cycle or samsara began. But because of the cataclysm and how it may have affected her, this time the resurrection process may have been impeded, because let's be honest, we've always been told something about the next Archon in every single nation so far. We even know about the Tsaritsa since the beginning of the game, but no one, and I repeat no one, has ever mentioned the Pyro Archon. If she's dead, then it could be that in the meantime the Fire Sovereign, the Sun, has been ruling over Natlan for the past 500 years. Maybe even the Endless Ring of War was something he came up with. In this case, we would have a similar concept to Nevelet, with the only difference being that everybody knows about the Fire Sovereign being the ruler. Well, we can only wait and see, hoping that Natlan won't be delayed by a whole month, because I really wanna go there as soon as possible. And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact Theory videos, consider subscribing. This is definitely not going to be the last video about Natlan I'll make. This channel has become Natlan Impact at this point. As soon as they show us the other 3 Saurians, I will make another one in an instant. Anyway, I think I'll see you again with the 4.7 quest analysis, but in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.